G'day folks, Nathan here. I'm just going to do a video today on a topic that came up while I was recently doing some niche control with a relatively new shooter who was accompanying me, given that it was his block. And essentially we're removing some feral pigs that were fairly transient in nature and travelling through the block on a fairly regular basis. So we had quite a bit of time sitting around and observing, and obviously that gave the opportunity to have a bit of a chat about a couple of things. So one of the occurrences that happened on that site was we had an engagement with a moderate sized sow who ran after the shot. And there was some questions obviously prompted by that, which is all quite interesting, but it got me thinking that maybe there was an opportunity to do a little bit of a video about terminal ballistics and actions after the shot, more or less talking about the some ethical hunting considerations. So one of the things that I've seen quite often with those newer to hunting is it can be a little bit hard to judge whether you've hit or missed a shot. Because your gut feel isn't developed on how effective your shot was necessarily, and so you don't always have that opportunity to understand straight away whether you've made a good shot, and therefore there's some observations you can make in terms of the animal's reaction, which will assist you in understanding what's occurred. And sometimes there'll just be no reaction whatsoever, but then the ethics of the matter with hunting is that obviously we're trying to achieve the best result we can for the animal, despite the fact that we are actively killing it as a component of hunting, but ensuring that the animal welfare considerations of the highest are of the highest standard that they can be. So with that in mind, obviously I'm not going to get into a real deep dive on the terminal ballistics, but obviously we need to make sure we're using a firearm, cartridge and projectile that are suitable for the task at hand. That have the ability to humanely destroy the animal, deposit enough energy on the target when it hits, and will cause enough damage to ruin the vitals. So I'll probably do another video at a later stage on the detailed terminal side of things, but essentially every animal when it's engaged in the hunting field needs to be considered as a 3D object, not as a 2D object, and you need to be looking halfway up the shoulder and aiming to break the offside shoulder, not the shoulder that's closest to you. And so that basically shot placement can be used on any angle, so rear quartering, front quartering, full broadside. It's not obviously applicable for a frontal headshot or for a Texas heart shot, which is from the rear. But if you take that sort of point of aim, then you're going to have a terminally effective shot. Now, assuming you're using an appropriate cartridge for the task at hand, and in the specific example we've got in this video, I was running a 6.5 Creedmoor shooting 143 grain on the ELDX projectiles, which are highly sufficient for the task at hand. We'll sort of move on to talking about shot reactions. So there are some specific shot reactions that will occur in the field which can then assist you in understanding what occurred with shot placement. Now, in the video that we'll put up shortly, we had the fortunate opportunity to have both the thermal video and a night camera that was in close proximity to the bait pole, which so you can basically see exactly how the animal reacted on the shot. But when you look at the placement, it was exactly as it should have been in terms of straight through the shoulder, centre mass on a broadside animal. So the expectation potentially with that type of shot placement is that the animal will just drop on the shot, and that just isn't true. So in many occurrences animals will drop straight away, but there's a number of factors that come into play which may cause an animal to run, and one of those key factors is the level of awareness of the animal. So any animal that's spooked or heightened generally will have adrenaline in its system, and the second that most animals have adrenaline in their system, regardless of your shot placement, unless it's central nervous system, i.e. head, brain, etc., they will run on the shot a little bit, because adrenaline does wonderful things within the system of an animal, us included. So a aware animal that you've spooked, an animal that is in a scenario where it's highly cautious because it understands that it shouldn't be there, so out on open ground, And in this scenario, that's exactly what occurred. So we had a pig that had come in and was on open ground feeding on bananas, very nervous about the fact that it was out in the open, which is where we wanted it, so we could get a clean engagement. But certainly that had contributed to the animal being more alert and aware, and adrenaline was at play on the shot. So, talking specifically about shot reactions, there's a couple of really simple ones to have a look at, and it'll be interesting to see if you guys can pick it up when you look at the video later on. But basically, if an animal hunches up, so it's sideways and arches its back on the hit and sort of sucks itself in, that is a fairly good indication of a gut hit, and that'll be usually accompanied by a big thwack when you hit it, so a big wet slap sound when that round hits it. The animal may make some form of pain noise, and it will always run on a gut shot unless you've hit something vital as well, such as the spine, liver, etc., which is a little bit further back. So that sort of hunched up, arched animal is an indication of a gut shot, and you're going to have a fairly decent tracking job on that animal because it's going to get a fair way with that type of shot placement. Now, we get an animal that jumps on the shot, so it may just jump startled and then run, or it may jump and kick out its rear legs. That's generally an indication of a good hit through the heart-lung region. Typically it has damaged the heart when they react that way, and that animal is not long for this world. So it may run from a reaction like that, but that animal is not going to get a long way. And that's fairly normal. So another reaction is that the animal will shudder on the hit and then run with its head down, like really low, as if it can't physically lift anything, and generally that will indicate that you've had some fairly significant damage through the musculature, so it physically can't lift its head up as it's running, and it's an indication of a lethal hit again, because that animal is obviously not functioning properly and not able to be alert when it runs. And that's one of the things you can see in this video with the particular pig that's shot here. Its head's low, despite the fact that it's taken on very quickly. Its head's low, and it moves off in a very fast fashion. So a couple of other things to note when we're talking about follow-up to shooting. So you've taken your shot. You're going to go to the site and have a look. So if the animal has run and you're really confident of your shot and you couldn't get a follow-up shot or whatever, and the animal's taken off, you're best off before you start tracking an animal giving it a little bit of time. And why that is quite often an animal will move a short distance after the shot. It will then pull up and sort of assess what's happened. It'll be quite sore, obviously, if it's not critically wounded right there. And that gives them time to stiffen up and potentially bleed out, and that'll facilitate a fairly short tracking job. If you go a little bit early on that and then you bump the animal in heavy cover, long grass, whatever, what you will find is, again, you'll have that adrenaline kick in. That animal may get up and push further, and you might end up with a fairly significant tracking job based on an animal that knows it's being pursued. It'll just keep moving. So, give it a little bit of time after the shot. There's varying thoughts on what a little bit of time looks like, and it really is a little bit scenario dependent. But, if you're 100% confident and you got the time, there's nothing wrong with half an hour. For me, I tend to wait probably 10 minutes just to let the situation settle before I start tracking, and then off you go. So, and again, this is after every single shot. Whether you think you hit or you missed, you need to go and check the site where you engaged the animal. And what you're looking for is any of the obvious signs that you've had a hit. So that might be cut fur on the ground, it might be blood, but quite often on a lot of these animals, regardless of the calibre you use, there might just be no sign. So, and this particular pig didn't have any blood sign at all till probably 15 metres away from where she was hit, and that's fairly typical. So when an animal is hit, the first reaction is they jump forward because they've taken that hit, and as soon as they do that, basically the skin and the muscle misalign, and therefore that covers the hole either on entry or exit of the projectile if it did exit, and blood can't get out, so they don't always initially drop blood. If the round's gone through lungs, typically they will bleed out of the snout and or mouth as they're running, so you'll start picking up blood sign probably within that sort of 5 to 10 metre mark after the hit. So that's a key one. Don't be disheartened when you get to where the animal was and have a look, because you'll quite often you won't find any sign there. And that's another key thing to have a think about as well when you do take a shot, is make sure you've got a reference point for where you were and a solid reference point for where the animal was when the shot was taken, because that's a pretty key cause in why people don't find animals when they follow up, is they just don't have those good reference points and they get to where they think the animal was but they're miles off. And that can be quite tricky, particularly at night time or in heavy cover. So, you know, there's various ways you can get around that, you know, using your GPS. You know, tying a bit of ribbon, toilet paper or tape to a tree, both from where you were and where you think the animal was, so you've got that consistent point of reference. Or if it's at night time, just putting down a little torch, you know, on those sites, so you've, you know, as you're looking, you've got that again, that point of reference to come back to. Anyway, yeah, so you've fired your shot, you've waited a little bit of soak time, you've walked in, gone and had a look, you can't find it. When you start tracking, there's a couple of things you sort of need to do. So the most obvious one is to go off gut feel initially. So if you can't find, there's no marks on the ground or whatever to follow, have a look at the terrain and the vegetation that you're in. And quite often you'll find that there's a clear pathway that sort of seems a little bit obvious. It may not be a pad, but you know, when you think about it from the animal's perspective, particularly if you had that opportunity to see it initially run, you should be able to pick a line where you think that animal's gone. So that can be quite helpful in picking up an initial sign when you're tracking, and then basically from there you need to start really looking hard for ground sign, and it's those obvious things of animal hoof marks in the ground or paw prints if that's what you're chasing. It's any of the blood sign. It's any of the transfer signs, so any mud that was on the animal that's brushed off on other vegetation, etc. Anything where grass has been crushed into the ground in a print, branches have been snapped off a tree, or you get what's called pointing sign, i.e. where an animal might have run through grass and brushed up on it, and then that grass will be pointing in the direction of travel of the animal, so that'll give you a fairly good indication of where things might be. Anyway, we'll get into the actual footage. So I'll put the thermal footage up first, and then we'll put up the footage off the night camera. And then when I was there conducting that activity, I actually did a little walkthrough of the ground sign as well, so you can see that and get the general gist. But that's a general concept. So, you know, from a hunting ethics point of view, it's really important. You know, if you're going to hunt and you're going to shoot an animal, you need to make sure you've got the right gear so that you can kill it effectively, and that means the right sort of firearm for the task with the right optic, using the right cartridge with the right projectile with the right terminal capabilities, and then regardless of whether the animal drops on the shot, runs a little bit or runs a lot, you have a responsibility to go and follow that animal up and track it. Okay, and you know, if that takes all day, it takes all day. That's just what it is from my perspective. You know, we don't, you don't, conduct this sort of activity and then just, well, I'm not sure if I missed or not, and then just let it go. You always follow up, and more often than not, if you do a half reasonable job and use a bit of common sense, you'll come off with a good result. Anyway, hope that information's useful. The thermal footage will be up first. Feel free to put any comments in the back end as you go, and or questions around this particular topic, and I'll see what I can do to answer those in the comment section. Cheers. Just doing a quick walkthrough on a site where we're doing a little bit of niche feral pig management currently. So as you can see there, we've got a blind screen, so we've got an approach to our bait site, which is some bananas, and then we've got some motion activated cameras as well, a couple of different spots. So last night we had a pig come in on thermal here with a mate and start feeding just on the bananas here. And then out back up over the top here from a direction which is enabled through a backstop over here. That pig was engaged and destroyed. But what was interesting, and I'll have the footage up on here also, is that pig ran on the shot, so it was straight through the shoulders, very clean. And that animal ran along, a bit hard to track here, but you could see the animal break into here through thermal, displayed tracks there in the mud, all the way around the corner here. And straight into this patch of bamboo. And you can see the arrow I've drawn on the ground there. That's the splayed marks to the right of that, where the animal's then busted straight up in here. So she's in there. She's a big old sow. She's in there probably 8 metres from where we're standing currently. It's just a little bit thick to go and have a look. But I'll put the photos up from when I went in there earlier. But that round was 143 grain ELDX out of a 6.5 Creedmoor, straight through the shoulder, broken shoulder, both lungs. So a very terminally effective shot. And that animal's still run probably near on 40 metres from where it was engaged. So I guess really just the point is, you know, have a look at your shot reactions when you shoot animals. It was obvious that it was a clean hit, both because we had the thermal video, which is obviously up on this. We had video off the surveillance camera, and then we could obviously see as the animal was running in the way it was, with head down, strung out, and an awkward gait, plus the ground sign, splayed prints, very erratic running, very clear that it was on its last legs. And then sure enough, the humanely destroyed animal discovered in there. Anyway, always follow up your shots with tracking, even if you do think you missed. That one was never in doubt, but always good practice.